Try to keep up because we are on the move. This is our portal and recruiting live update show here at the Voice of College Football each and every Tuesday. Make it a point, 1 p.m. Eastern time. LeeAnn Herring right next to me, of course, Director of Recruiting at the Rebel Walk. And talk about keeping up. I can't keep up with LeeAnn's credentials. So you've added another one this week. There at UK Wildcats Wire. You're going to be writing for the USA Today site for Kentucky.
Super excited. That's where I got my start under Larry Vaught, Gary Morris. They took a chance on me, law school, leaving law school, working in corporate sports, wanting to go cover the Cats. And I had an opportunity. So things came full circle. So yeah, kind of living the dream right now. I never thought that I would be covering two teams at a time, much less Kentucky and Ole Miss. So super excited to start there. We have a couple stories coming out, some exciting news going on at the Bluegrass. I had to wear my stand on business hat because, coming back here, we are actually on Tuesday, no moving around. We are definitely on the move, but we're at our regular scheduled time here on the Voice of College Football. I feel like we're really living up to the motto, no off season, because there really hasn't been much of an off season, especially on the recruiting trail. We have the #1 OT in the country for 2027, Kennedy Brown. They say everything is bigger and better in Texas, and just taking a look for, at his film, I can go on and on, but he'll be joining us here shortly. We have a lot going on. Mark, of course, a big weekend out in Austin with the Elite 11 and all in 122, which is a new thing brought to you by Elite 11 and Nike. There was a big, huge regional, of course, Keyshawn Henderson, Malachi Zager, all the guys that we've been talking about, but there's been a couple of commitments this week. Top QB Jared Curtis has narrowed it down. Where will he end up home? And then a lot of recruiting rumblings, but we have a lot to talk about from Elite 11, a lot of guys showing out and showing up, not just at the quarterback on the Elite 11 side, but of course showing up at all 22, a lot of defensive guys, a lot of players really upping up their ante. But again, without further ado, I believe our guest is here, Kennedy Brown, joining us. To talk a little bit about his recruitment, of course, big things ahead, rising up the ranks. So let's bring him on.
Kennedy, welcome to the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you being here. Kennedy, can you hear us? Hello, Kennedy. Can you see us? Let's start there. Hey, Kennedy. Can you hear us? Unfortunately, we might have some issue with the connection, even though we've got the video.
We have the video going. We just don't have the audio going. So give us a minute to get that wrapped up as we're joined by the #1 OT in the state, in the nation right now. Are we good to go with audio?
It sounds like it. Kennedy, can you hear us? Okay, he just clicked out. Maybe he's going to try to click back in. I don't know if you've got contact with him, LeeAnn, but you could just let him know to click back in and give it another shot. Sometimes that does the trick if you click out and click back in.
Kennedy is joining us. His coach out there at Kingswood is gracious enough to let us be with him. He did mention that they are having some Wi-Fi issues, so hopefully we can get that resolved, and hopefully he can join us back. Just kind of giving a little bit of preview for those outside of Texas. If you haven't had the opportunity to get down to Kingswood and watch just what kind of breakout player on the offensive line. I mean, I can't even know where to begin when it comes to talk about Kennedy Brown's skills. You know how I feel about offensive and defensive linemen. You can't get it down without the big guys in front. And this is a kid who really, he's got great physicality. He's got great size. I mean, right now, even though he's a 2027 mark, he really does check off all the boxes, of course, rising up on those on-3 ranks, top recruit nationally. I mean, really just taking the storm. Like I said, they say everything's bigger and better in Texas. And when you see Brown, when you catch his film, whether it's he just pops off, as I like to say, but he's one of those kids that just has a ton of upside. And it's going to be really interesting. Of course, he's got a lot of visits lined up. There's definitely a couple of Texas schools that we could probably name off the hand that are trying to keep his talent in Texas. But again, he's got an offer sheet most would dream of. But when you see him already, I mean, he's just chaotic when it comes to the line of scrimmage. When you see him, that's a kind of a guy that you want up in those front trenches. You know, we talk about so many of elite alignment, so many programs looking and shopping, and how the commodity of an offensive and even a defensive lineman have really gone up, not just in the transfer portal, but on the high school recruiting scene. Because now, you know, I always say those guys don't get enough credit for all that they do, but we're seeing more and more now in the recruiting trail that a lot of teams are not only taking top elite linemen from the transfer portal, but they're also building for the future.
All right, LeeAnn, fingers crossed. Here we go. We believe we've got Kennedy this time. Kennedy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, loud and clear. Very nice.
Sure.
Good to see you. Good to hear from you, Kennedy. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for coming on, Kennedy. We were just kind of giving you the intro. You've definitely been rising up the ranks for those outside of Texas that haven't had the opportunity to see your tape or get you in live reps. I was kind of just saying, you know, the kind of physicality, you know, you are at 2027, but you are really rising young talent, of course, On3, putting you on some of their top recruiting lists. You know, not that rankings mean a lot, but we know that it's always great as a recruit to be able to have that national syndication. Being that number one OT. As I explained, you still have a long recruiting road ahead of you. But if you kind of want to kind of start off, you know, where you are in your recruiting, kind of where your recruitment is. I know that there's plenty of people, including big programs here in the state of Texas, looking to keep you at home, but kind of talking about your approach, or, you know, what you're doing this off season, how your spring go, as far as any teams that are really standing out in your recruitment, any visit plans. You know, kind of start from there and kind of share for those who don't really know a lot outside of Texas about kind of the elite talent you're bringing to that offensive line.
Right. So I'm not really leaning towards any program currently, but what we're building in this offseason, it's just great. We're just trying to go back-to-back playoff runs overall, but just building the standard of winning and being accountable for what we do. The little things always matter, and I'm just looking forward to what comes in the future. But I'm really just looking for just like, what am I looking for in the program?
Yeah, what are some of the schools? Like you said, there's not really a front runner. Of course, you have a long way. You already have an offer sheet. Any visits you're looking forward to taking this spring? You might, you know, talk about some of the programs in state. You know, just wherever you kind of get the people familiar who may not know about Kennedy Brown, and kind of, you know, what you're about, and some of the schools that might be interested, you know, and kind of leading on in your recruitment right now.
I'm mainly just looking forward to UT, or not mainly, but I'm really looking forward to UT, Alabama, Georgia. There's a couple more. I just can't get them on my mind, but I'm just looking forward to all those schools, the schools overall.
And what are you most looking for in a program? Like we said, we know that all those schools, clearly they've seen and recognized your elite talent, and you still have plenty of more ball to play. You have many ceilings to reach, and you already being highly regarded in the state of Texas as a top offensive lineman overall. But what are you looking as an athlete, you know, on the football field and off the football field, you know, when you're starting to make these trips to some of these programs?
I'm really big on player-coach relationships. I love that. I just thrive for that. And how the players are around me, like the type of energy they bring to me, and how they encourage others around me, and just, are they trying to be okay or be great? There's a difference between that, and I'm just looking for great teammates. And the environment, really, to the environment, academics, and football.
Well, those are all great things across the board. You definitely hit on all the major points. You know, it's a little bit different. You know, when we talk a lot about the off season, there's definitely a lot to get done. You know, I'm sure a lot of your offensive teammates are on that 7-on-7 circuit, but we know for offensive linemen, it's a little bit different. You guys don't necessarily have the opportunity outside, you know, your school programs and, you know, camps and everything. Can you kind of talk about the approach that you take during the off season as far as what you work on or what you've been working on? Like you talk about, you know, you definitely are a team player and you want to help elevate your program, but what personally have you been working on as an offensive lineman, you know, to just kind of up your game, or what's your approach to the off season?
Really and truly just working on footwork, because I've had a couple flaws, but I'm just really just trying to work on footwork and also teaching younger players in my school, like O-line in general, trying to help them out and be great and really just eliminating all those flaws, just trying to be perfect. You can't be perfect, but you can be great. So that's what I'm just trying to lean towards.
Mark, you want to chime in? I don't know if you've had a chance and opportunity to look at his film, but you're always really good about bringing some things in. So Mark, do you have anything, for Kennedy you want to bring up or maybe talk about?
Well, Kennedy, we see most recently that you visited Notre Dame. I think that was your last stop. And obviously, they're doing some great things coming off a national championship game appearance. Marcus Freeman has that rolling. I'm sure you get to visit with offensive line coach Joe Rudolph. They have a legacy of building great offensive lines. What was your takeaway from Notre Dame?
I haven't visited them yet, but I'm looking forward in the near future. But my takeaway from them really and truly is just what they've brought to their program and like how I can bring what they've set the standard to their program and try to translate it over to Kingwood. Really and truly just to not base it off of them, but take some notes as well. Just take some notes.
Kennedy, what is your checklist? You mentioned relationships and the coach player relationship and how important that is to you. And we hear that time and time again. And I think that gets undervalued by a lot of people out there in regards to fans thinking about where players want to go to school and play football. But what would be your complete checklist in regards to how you're evaluating these programs?
May you repeat the question? I apologize. You could cut out in the beginning.
No, I'm sorry, Kennedy. So in regards to what you're looking at in terms of both football and outside of football at these particular schools, what is the priority list for you?
Just the priority list is mine is just coaches not being such, what's it called? Not being friends, like not having such a friend relationship is more like a coach. Like it's on a bigger level for me. Like, I mean, like you got to be able to just coach. I'm sorry. I can't how do I say this? Just the takeaway I just say is just a great relationship. It's bigger than football. It's bigger than football. So I'd like to be a football relationship and out of football relationship. But just that, I'd say that.
Again, you have an offer list already, even though you are 2027. And while a lot of people outside of recruiting think, hey, 2027's down the road, it's all about, you obviously are big on relationships with your, future programs, coaches, and all that kind of stuff. But can you kind of talk about your family, and how they feel about, obviously they're going to support you wherever you go, but, is your family kind of pushing for you to stay close to home, or, are they just want you to go to a program that's a good fit, even if it means outside of Texas?
My mom doesn't really care where I go, but she knows as soon as I move out, she's going wherever. So she's just looking forward to getting out of the house, like getting out of the house. But
you gotta love that. Mamas do anything for their little ones. Lord knows I know with my boys and all that kind of stuff. My boys are big fans of a lot of the recruits. And last night we were talking about having you on the show, and my oldest Hatfield, he's like, man, we got to get him, and he put in a blurb at Ole Miss and everything. So no, but he was excited to see you, and he was excited to see. So and what does that mean to you? I mean, you're a young guy yourself, but how does it feel that there's a lot of young kids out there that get to watch you, now in an age of social media with, TikToks and Instagrams and X, Twitter, whatever you call it. What does that mean for you? Like when you go out and play and you see these young kids that come up to you and they know you and they just think this dynamic. I mean, how does that motivate you, when you play on Friday nights and just even in your off season?
It feels great, and it really does motivate me just because I know that people are looking up to me, and I'm really an example to the younger, like the youth. But like at Riverwood, my middle school, my coaches still talk about me, and then people come to me like, "Oh, are you Kennedy Brown?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's me," and stuff like that. But it just means the most to me, honestly, and it just gives me another boost just to play harder on Fridays.
And just, closing, we hear so much. And like I said, I could go on and on. I could give a dynamic breakdown just watching your film and getting the opportunity, hopefully, to watch you in the spring with those live recs. Just what a dynamic player you are, Kennedy. But, can you kind of talk about, from your perspective, you clearly, are trying to up your game all the time. But what do you think from you as an athlete that is often your most overlooked X factor? We know all the skills that everyone constantly talks about, the chaos you create on your physicality, on the line of scrimmage. But, what do you see as one of your like most overlooked qualities that you think that you really bring that sometimes people don't always notice right away?
I just say IQ, honestly. I'd say IQ just because, say, I say IQ. That's like a key thing because it takes a lot just to play at least both positions or all positions on the O line. Just because I can play, I'm versatile. Like I can play all positions on the O line. It's just IQ, I'd say.
Well, that's awesome. Again, Mark, I don't know if you have anything. I know that you're in the middle of school, and thank you so much to Coach Benson and yourself for letting us join. Thanks to Kingswood teachers. I hope that we're not pulling you out of class for too long. But again, thank you so much for coming on. You have a bright future ahead. We look forward to keeping up with your recruitment. Hopefully, be out in Houston, out there seeing some live reps and getting more. But again, the number one OT in Texas, definitely in the country. Not in just Texas. He's a top player across the board. If you don't know his name, Kennedy Brown, you sure will. Class of 2027. Thank you so much for joining us, Kennedy.
Yes, ma'am. Have a great rest of those days.
Thank you, Kennedy.
You too.
Thank you.
All right. Great to hear from him. And LeeAnn, thank you once again for bringing in one of the best at the offensive tackle position this time around with Kennedy Brown. So great to be able to connect with him. And I had thought that based on what I read online on one of the sites that he had just visited Notre Dame, but apparently that visit's coming up. But yeah, he's got an offer sheet that I'm seeing at 20. As you well know, he moved from Indianapolis down to Texas here in just about 3 years ago. So he has it wide open in regards to opportunities. So he can go just about anywhere he wants.
And I loved the realness that he brings. A lot of the times we see these kids and you can tell that they've been a little bit coached up on the answers. They kind of have that but he was not afraid to not be flawless. But again, a kid that strives for perfection. One of the things that I loved hearing about him is that not only is he trying to work on himself this off season, but many that we see, I always talk about that idea of separation. And one of the things I think that even makes Kennedy Brown even that more stronger, and a kid that you definitely want to recruit outside his dynamic talent, Mark, is the fact that he's a coachable kid, but he's also a coach and a mentor to the guys that are, could take his place down the road, so it was really exciting and good to hear him, what he was. And then what I loved, even though he hasn't made it to Notre Dame, he knows that with the relationship he's slowly building, he talks about, rarely do you hear kids talk about, setting themselves up already for that college atmosphere. And I love the fact that he was talking about, as he builds relationships with each of these programs, that he takes away a piece, especially like what he said he took away from Notre Dame, to try to bring that home and translate that. We talk so much about that transition and translate, but I love the way that Kennedy Brown approaches the game and how what he's using on the recruiting trail, he's not only using for his benefit, Mark, as far as being an elite blue chip player, but he's bringing it back to his team. So that way he improves not just the play, but the culture as well. So again, promising bright future. Like I said, if you haven't had a chance to watch Kennedy Brown's film, you need to watch it. And if you can get out there for some live reps, if you're down in Houston, Texas, just really a hotbed of talent across the board. But like they say, everything is bigger and better in Texas. And Kennedy Brown is definitely showing that he's not just an elite player. I think he's currently ranked 4 or 5 in the state of Texas. But again, 2027, not so far down the road, but already making a statement as the number 1 offensive tackle. And like you heard it, when you watch his film, this is a kid that could play at any position on that line. And it's great to see the versatility and what he brings to the game. So excited to hear more with Kennedy Brown.
On the Move, folks. We're on Facebook. We're on X. We would love to have you right here on YouTube, where you can make comments and ask questions and engage with us every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. I believe we stay in the great state of Texas, and I believe we also stay with the surname of Brown, a much different body frame, much different position, but one Mike Brown.
Well, for those who know, again, we're staying right in the Houston area. Like I said, there's a lot of talent in Texas, but when it comes to talent across the board, Houston may very well take the cake. Mike Brown is a name that we haven't mentioned a lot, but we've probably heard his counterpart. We've talked a lot about his quarterback out at Legacy Sports Insight, Keyshawn Henderson. Is his go-to guy. Mike Brown was on full display at Austin during the Elite 11 regionals, just completely showing out. I mean, it doesn't hurt when you have Keyshawn Henderson as your partner in crime throwing to you. But it was kind of interesting to see. We were hoping to have him on the show today, but he is actually watching his brother out in Tulane for his pro day. So again, that dynamic football DNA runs in their veins in the Brown family. But again, like I said, we're watching his film here. He just made another strong case of just what an elite route runner he is. He's a magician when it comes to creating separation. I know that when I talk about that separation, that closing speed, I'm usually referring to a cornerback, a DB, but man, when it comes to a wide receiver, this kid really just is a magician when he learns, when he gets off that backfield, is able to create that separation, man, it's just something special to watch. And then again, Kennedy Brown alluded to it about just having that football IQ. And, aside from his elite football skills, Mike Brown is another kid out of Houston that just has that dynamic football IQ. And as you can see here, Mike Elko has inked. It was kind of interesting to see where he was going to go. It was very kind of quiet whispers. We didn't think that we were going to be seeing a recruitment, much less his recruitment kind of shut down. But like they say, when you know, and the Aggies have really been turning it up down there in College Station, back-to-back weekends, dynamic visitors. And even though he was in Austin, made the announcement that he was going to be the next legacy. He was going to live on the legacy out in College Station. So again, 4-star elite, top country in the country as far as the wide receiver goes. When you look at his rankings, though, I think he should be a lot higher up. So that's why I say they're just numbers. But again, he does live up to the billing and more. Of course, Texas, Oklahoma, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, and a slew of others were, trying to make this move. But again, he decided to shut it down. And he's like I said, number 46 wide receiver, roughly about like 6'1", 180 pound, and he becomes the number 8 commit to join Mike Elko's 2026 class. It's well making up the ranks. But again, elite wide receiver was showing up and showing out with his go-to guy, Keyshawn Henderson, all weekend long at the Austin Regional. But unfortunately, he's not going to be a Longhorn or a Duck. He's going to be a Texas A&M Aggie. So congratulations to Mike, and hopefully we'll have him down the road to talk a little bit more about his commitment and just where he sees his place as a strong wideout room that's really building College Station.
And as you mentioned, based on that offer list, don't be surprised, people, if that ranking just shoots up the charts. This is a guy that runs a sub 11 100 meter at 10.91. LeeAnn alluded to his family ties, meaning brother Reggie plays tight end at Tulane, and his dad was a first-round pick for the Detroit Lions back in the day, 1996, Reggie Brown. So the genes are good, the DNA is good, and Mike Brown playing most likely for Mike Elko and Texas A&M starting in 2026, if that commit holds. All right, LeeAnn, I think we're going to be concentrating on the quarterback position here for a while, and with a really good one, first of all, in Jared Curtis.
Jared Curtis is one of those 2026 names that we've talked a lot about. Keijon Henderson, Ryder Lyons. I think we talk about each one of those a little bit each week. There's always an alluded to. As the dominoes begin to fall with this 2026 class, we see a lot of things shaping up. One kid is more lenient towards another. We see the boards changing. Of course, we know that Nashville Christian 5-star Jared Curtis, one of the most sought out guys, kind of under the radar as far as maybe not getting as much hype as Ryder Lyons, but believe me, he's still very much one of the most elite QBs. Has had a long offer list. He was one time, Georgia was a program from the jump that was really in tune with his recruitment. He was a one-time Georgia commit, but the minute that he decided to reopen, Oregon really came in the mix. So it's going to be interesting when it's all said and done if Georgia will prevail in this one. It's down to Georgia and Oregon. Phenomenal numbers. Again, he just continues to prove. We've seen him on a couple of occasions already this offseason, just what kind of arm he has. He completed over 70% of his passes. He had 637 rushing yards, 18 scores. He's been a 3-year starter at Nashville Christian. So when you talk about translating experience, Jared Curtis definitely has the resume to transition. He's passed for 7,665 yards, 92 touchdowns. He's gained 1,663 yards, scored 38 times on the ground. Again, he just brings the top shelf. When we talk about top shelf, when it comes to quarterbacks, as far as arm and capability, Jared Curtis definitely fits the bill. Again, it'll be interesting to see his commitment date we're hearing is set for May 5th. So it's still a little bit ways off. I believe it will be a battle to an end. While Georgia and Oregon, he has said, are his top 2 classes. Again, when we see elite quarterbacks like Jared Curtis, as we see the dominoes kind of fall when it comes to this 2026 quarterback room across the board, we can expect that doesn't stop the recruitment happening. Some other teams that we're still hearing for, one team in particular that we know has been kind of really been in the mix across the board since he, initially decommitted from Georgia, is Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State. Ole Miss has been on the kind of under the radar because we know that they're still looking for a strong 2026 class. So again, there's a possibility that somebody could creep in between Georgia and Oregon. But we do hear that Curtis talks a lot about, the relationship that he's had with Kirby Smart. But again, when he decided to decommit from Georgia and reopen his recruitment, it was nothing against the Bulldogs. He just, like many of these guys, he wanted to entertain and see what else was out there. And we know, of course, the Georgia quarterback room. We know the situation in Georgia right now off the field, has changed a lot of recruitments and whatnot, but they still remain in the hunt. And then on the flip side of things, as soon as he decommitted Mark from Georgia, Oregon was right there, and rightfully so. But again, the interesting thing that we've talked a lot about as far as Oregon, Mark, is that quarterback room. It seems extremely saturated. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of pitch that Oregon continues to pull. We know that between these last, classes, especially this upcoming class, a transfer class, there's been a lot of rumblings, a lot of mix. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But we do know that Jared Curtis does share that he feels like under Coach Lanning and Coach Stein, that they can really bring out the best of his talent. So despite that overly saturated room that I feel, where Jared Curtis, as elite as he is, he would probably have to wait some time before he's the first man up down there. But again, he feels like they really can bring out the best of him. So again, it's going to be interesting. But I would watch out for Auburn and Alabama, especially those 2 teams really going after him. Hugh Freeze has really been kind of under the radar when it comes to Curtis. We know that his QB room has kind of been upheaval and to say the least. But again, it'll be an interesting recruitment. But May 5th will be the day, and it seems that it's down officially to Oregon and Georgia. So we'll see who makes that last push for him.
And again, folks, you're looking at the stats of Jared Curtis. And just to extend, LeeAnn, on a point that you made, when you look at that 70% completion percentage from this past season, that is up from 56% the year before. And I've only gotten to see about 3 plays from him. So I'm not going to analyze based on 3 plays, but I'm looking at stats tell part of the story. And going from 56% to 70% is not just more completions, but when you can throw 15 more touchdowns, you go from 25 touchdown passes to 40, throwing 70 less passes. So he has become much more productive as he has moved along. And that's been pretty impressive coming from him, from his progression from his sophomore to his junior season. So again, that's why he's getting the big offers, and we would just expect him to continue to improve. But he has been a touchdown machine, as you mentioned, with 38 rushing and a 92 against only 19 interceptions for Jared Curtis. So, LeeAnn, I know that you're going to talk more quarterbacks eventually. We're going to get to the Elite 11, but first you want to talk about probably the best player in the state of Kentucky, the Bluegrass State, which you know quite well. So, at the offensive tackle position, another really good one here.
Jarvis Strickland is a name that when you're talking about offensive tackles across the board in 2026, there's so many programs that have been interested from him. He's originally from Chattanooga and then moved over to Kentucky, bought Paducah Tillman. This is just a kid that, just oozes with physicality. He could play. So he's another kid, much like Kennedy Brown, that's extremely versatile, 6'6", 290. But, it'll be interesting to see where he lands. We got to talk to Strickland a little bit yesterday, kind of where his recruitment is, and it looks like he's going to announce his recruitment decision, his commitment this coming Saturday. He does have two visits set to Vanderbilt and Kentucky. Kentucky has made a push for Jarvis Strickland from the jump. He's really built a strong relationship. Coach Vince Morrow, he kind of shared about how that's not only a coach that he's been able to build a recruiting relationship with, but he knows off the field if he needs someone. That's, Coach Morrow is someone who's been a staple in Kentucky football, but there's someone he can lean on. He said that he's looking for somewhere that he really feels like home and is comfortable with, and his environment that will continue to push and develop his ability. On a personal note, he kind of shared that Kentucky seems to be the place that his mama feels where, she can trust the staff if she leaves him to grow him, nurture him, and so many of those things that we look outside of football. So again, the number one player in the Bluegrass, Jarvis Strickland, looking to make a commitment here. In the next couple of days, it really does look, I know that some crystal balls have him going to Vandy. I won't call it yet, but just kind of what my gut tells me, the relationship, I feel like Kentucky really does have the edge. And again, we talk about a fit and we talk about instant impact players. Kentucky is one of those programs that is yet to have a commitment in 2026. They are also the only SEC program currently that doesn't have a commit in 2026. So if they were going to make a splash, it definitely could be on Saturday if they're able to land Jarvis Strickland, which I just feel, they've been looking to rebuild their offensive line, Mark, and it's no question that Strickland is going to bring versatility. Like I said, he carries his weight so well when you see him. He could play, I think he could eventually move into that interior lineman. Again, this is a kid who excels as a tackle. He's just got this crazy, nasty disposition that you want to have an offensive lineman. But again, he could easily transition to center and to guard. And I think he would just be a valuable asset to whatever program. But in particular, I think that he would be a big instant impact player down in Lexington for that 2026 class. We know Mark Stoops and his staff offensively have gone to the portal, this past go to get a few offensive linemen to really rebuild that line, that game in the trenches for the Cats. And they've also have some promising 2025 class. But as we've seen, Mark, just the commodity, the value of having a good offensive and defense front have just become so much more crucial, especially in the SEC conference, as the play gets more difficult, as it gets more, engrossing in those trenches. You've got to have strong depth. I know that we talk about depth, plenty other positions, and it goes on for days, but rarely do we find programs that really are set when it comes to depth of having a strong offensive and defensive, depth. So Kentucky definitely looking and hoping that they're not only going to get their first commit later this week in Jarvis Strickland, but again, not hanging alone in the SEC and finally winning one in that 2026 recruiting trail. But again, I don't think it would be any better than getting the number one state player in the state of Kentucky to come home to Lexington. So it'll be an interesting take. But again, another dynamic player, ton of upside that I think really will be a nice fit if he does commit to the Wildcats on Saturday.
When they get that offensive line where they want it to be at Kentucky, they, of course, call it the Big Blue Wall. And it has not been the Big Blue Wall for the last couple of years, with a lot of cracks and pretty fragile up front. So Mark Stoops trying to get back to what that Kentucky run game and the offensive front looked like when they were churning out 10-3 type seasons and not 4-8 kind of seasons when they were at their peak under Stoops 4 or 5 years ago. And Jarvis Strickland would be a major step in that direction. 43 watching. I'm guessing you're on X. I'm guessing you're on Facebook, but we're building a YouTube channel. It's our recruiting channel here at the Voice of College Football. And 43 of you have found us as subscribers. Let's make that 400. I'm going to aim low. 400 by kickoff 2025. And then we'll go beyond that. But you got to find us on YouTube. And we do like to blast it out to all the platforms so we can be available to all of you and reach a larger audience, but make it on back to YouTube. That way you can engage with both LeeAnn and myself, ask questions, and talk recruiting. And of course, the transfer portal is just a couple weeks away, so we'll be digging in on that as well very soon. All right, LeeAnn, the Elite 11 is a magical term for anybody in recruiting, and even those of us who aren't like in the recruiting game day after day after day know about the Elite 11. And it's basically an 8 or 9 week process, moving on from region to region and going across the country. And I think they were just in Austin. I believe they're going to Atlanta. They started in LA. They finish up in State College from what I see. And then they do the finals, I believe, in LA again in June. And so I think we got a new category here. You're ahead of me again. Pop out. You got pop out here. So who's popping out to us at this point?
Well, before we get to the pop out, we talk about Elite 11, that if you're a QB, that's where you want to end up, whether you make it to a regional. And like Mark said, they make these stops each week. You get a slew of strong regional quarterbacks hoping to punch their ticket, get that golden ticket to that final show. They were in Austin this week. Another thing that they just started is the opening and all 22. Like I talk about in this offseason, there's not a lot of opportunities outside a few major camps for the offensive and defensive guys to show their skills. Well, Nike has emerged with Elite 11 to start the opening in all 22. So these are included at some of these regionals that we see for Elite 11. So not only are we seeing top talent regionally when it comes to the quarterback game, we're also seeing some of the top defensive and offensive guys that are not in the quarterback position. And we see a couple of guys who are definitely some strong 2A players, but 2 guys have already punched their ticket to that Elite 11, and it should be no surprise. I mean, it was just another day at the office for Houston Cougar commit Keyshawn Henderson, making waves and throwing to the new Aggie commit Mike Brown. Like I said, each time again, if you ever doubted Keyshawn Henderson was just not a phenomenal athlete, but really striving to solidify him as a QB, just watch him every week, because every week he just continues to impress with his strong arm ability, his just athletic ability, his football IQ. And again, Austin was no different. He punches his ticket to the Elite 11 finals, which should come as no surprise. Of course, there's always the rumblings. Will Houston be able to hang on? And we're hearing today he is visiting Houston, and he remains committed. It doesn't look like he'll be taking any other visits. He wants to build in Houston. So this is one thing you admire in a time when so many kids, we talk about so many of these elite kids that commit early, they verbally commit, but like I say, it's a long way to December. But I think for Keyshawn Henderson, the Houston Cougars, Willie Fritz and that staff continue to do a good job. He definitely has become the key to the talent in Houston. And I think that, as we continue to get deeper in the thing, there will be more colleges more programs continue to knock on that door. But you got to admire Keyshawn's will and determination to build in Houston. And I mean, he would be the face of a franchise, like we like to say in the NFL. Keyshawn Henderson staying at Houston not only would bring big opportunity for him, but it would bring big opportunity for the program. So I think that Keyshawn Henderson realizes that, sometimes being loyal, being true, and throwing down from your hometown is the way to go. So it looks like the Houston Cougars remain strong and steadfast in keeping Keyshawn Henderson. Another guy across the way that has been talking a lot about is Diabell. He may not be a Texas native, but he is committed to Texas. Diabell, another under the radar QB that definitely has a lot of elite skill. He was the second player this weekend at the Austin Regional Mark to punch his ticket to the Elite 11. Another dynamic player. That's another that recruitment, while he remains locked in for Texas, we are still hearing that he is talking to some other programs. So while he may be locked in with Texas, unlike Keyshawn Henderson, he still is frequently talking with some other programs. But again, Steve Sarkisian definitely and his staff doing a tremendous job in trying to lock in this top talent. Again, punching his ticket should come no surprise. This weekend at Elite 11. So Keyshawn Henderson, Diabell showed out in Texas. Of course, for Diabell, right in his future home backyard as a future Texas Longhorn, punching his ticket out to Cali. So again, and some other guys that we've talked a lot about who were present at the Austin Regional. Malachi Ziegler continues to solidify, continues to rise up the rank. And Peyton Houston, we talk about kids being on the move. Peyton Houston, another dynamic quarterback that just continues every time you see him to grow, to catch more eyes. He had a strong arm, again on display, but man, just looking, I was getting tired just looking at some of the visits that Peyton Houston, I think he's up to 12 unofficial visits at the moment. I mean, he's definitely leaving no stone unturned when it comes to looking at a future program. No emerging leader just yet, but again, you can't help but think Peyton Houston definitely is taking and making the best out of his recruitment. But a lot of quarterbacks in that 2026 class continuing to make a case for a strong showing heading into their seniors and junior seasons.
All right, yeah, the Elite 11 it's phenomenal. I went on the website to kind of prep and just to look at the list of all-time great quarterbacks just recently. Of course, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, and then you go back to Aaron Rodgers 20 years ago. So the Elite 11 obviously has been a standard for a long, long time, and we look forward to seeing those regionals conclude here in the next couple of months and lead to Los Angeles. Now we got our pop-out list, and you're going to have to fill me in on what you got going here.
I guess I've been listening to a little bit too much Kendrick Lamar. You just got to pop out and show and talk about, again, the Austin Regional was a place that we not only saw elite quarterbacks, we saw a lot of versatile players. And I don't know if it's just a Texas thing or, just a regional thing, but man, 2026 Legend Bay out of North Forney, athlete, as he is described, out of Texas. I mean, his name alone already screams greatness, star power. And this is a kid that already, Mark, lives up to the billing. He just has an immense skill set in his toolbox already. He's just got a unique ability to excel at multiple positions. We saw him in Austin, not only as at the Elite 11 portion where he was showing his immense, where he could sling his great quick release. But as you can see here, he also was very, very impressive as a wide receiver. So he went from throwing the ball out to catching the ball. But again, a skilled two-way player that really just is an impressive route runner all weekend. And I think that we're only going to hear more about Legend Bay. He already is making the case for being a legend, not only with his quick release as a strong quarterback from North Forney, but also as a pretty impressive route runner. There was a couple routes on there that he was just spot on every single time. So again, these are the showcases where you like to see these kids like Legend Bay, who don't necessarily get an opportunity, during this off season to really show their tape and their film, because spring ball doesn't start for a lot of these programs here in Texas not till May. So you're talking about a lot of dead time when you're talking about recruitment for some of these kids, because now we talk about it. These regional camps, these 7-on-7s become even more important when you're talking about those live reps. As we see the spring progress, we see the rankings, the rumblings, everything changing. So, a lot of these players, especially on the high school circuit, even at strong and big programs, even here in Texas, are really having to find a way to continue to get seen. So again, Legend Bay was not only slinging for that Elite 11 with his quick release, his strong arm, he was also catching a lot of reps out there, showing just why he continues to separate himself with, as a two-way player with his unique skill set. But a lot of kid with a lot of upside, and he's definitely going to make a lot of programs in Texas that are trying to knock on his door and keep his talent here, not too far away from home.
All right. My boy's a big Kendrick Lamar fan, so I'll have to ask him about popping out. But next on the list, we got DJ Rump from DeSoto.
That I had to bring some DeSoto kids in here. There was a lot of kids, that I had the opportunity, a lot of names that, we've talked about, from Booby Feaster to Sherrod Baker to Miles Johnson Cook, but DJ Rump, a defensive edge that has just got such high mobility. From the moment I saw this kid, he just continued to separate himself every time he got in reps. This is a kid that's going to be really special. He's already holding an offer sheet, from places like Georgia, Georgia Tech, SMU. Whoever wins this kid over, I'm telling you, they're going to get a workhorse. He just continues to separate himself. He won the defensive MVP player this weekend out at the Austin Regional. When you just watch him, what you got to love about a defensive guy is just he's hungry. And he just navigates, again, like I said, Georgia, USC, you can see from his film, he's just a student of the game, but there's just something about his intensity and match that with his skill set. Like, he's just going to go hard every single rep. When I saw him in so many of those playoff games the last 2 years, and when I saw him most recently this past season when DeSoto made that playoff run, I mean, every time he got in, he was just hungrier and hungrier every time. And what you got to love about him, he's about 6'2", 215, and you can see from his body, really physical guy. He's got a strong build. But the good thing about him with his he's just when it comes to the edge, with his size and his physicality, he's really a good matchup with some of those bigger offensive linemen, and that's what I think makes him appealing when you look at it, is that he can really have no problem chasing down the ball, but he has no problem going head to head with some of the offensive linemen. So a big weekend for DJ Rump. We were hoping to get him on the show, but he's been training, so hopefully he'll tune in with us here sometime soon. But again, a lot of good things for this kid. If you don't know this name, again, get down to DeSoto for spring ball. Georgia, a lot of schools in-state are looking at him, but I suspect that more will continue to get on the bandwagon for DJ Rump. This is a kid, like I said, really going to be a really special edge rusher. I really wouldn't be surprised if he lands at a place like Georgia, because, again, such an elite skill set and just hungry and thirsty, and he really is. And like I said, what makes him appealing is that he is, for his size, his frame, his physicality, he can go with some of those bigger offensive linemen, and that's a rarity in a good edge.
All right, LeeAnn, time to break down some more of that Texas talent, this time from the home of the Baylor Bears, Waco, at the running back spot.
Well, it's been a while since I've talked about a running back, another one of my favorite positions. It's always undervalued, but extremely essential, especially in those RPO offenses. But 2027 running back Lathan Wiston out of Waco Midway had a strong weekend. He was one of those guys that really just showed up and showed out, was really the talk of the town in Austin. He as far as a running back, he's kind of like what you like to see, like what I say Shakai Mills Knight is they're more of a strong physical. He's just great mismatch, with his skill and his speed. Again, he has an offer sheet already that he's building, but of course, Baylor is looking to keep him very, very close to home. Definitely not wanting to lose this kind of talent. But again, this is a kid that's just a strong navigator. I talk a lot about, the breakout, the speed, the footwork. But another thing, when I saw Carde Mack, which is very similar, what I saw in Lathan Winston in his film from this weekend was that he is really good at navigating in small areas. So he's one of those running back that when it comes down to it, he's going to fight for the ball, but he really uses his body to be able to navigate and really find a way to get past some of those bigger defenders. So again, Waco Midway, 2027 running back with a strong weekend, probably one of the best, one running back MVP, and rightfully so. Again, he's just quick, but again, you see he's a stronger, physical, bigger kind of back, but even despite his size, he moves like he's probably about 3 inches shorter and can really navigate. Again, he's one of those running backs that you like, very similar to what, like I say, Shakai Mills Knight. They don't fit the stereotypical frame of a running back, but they have that quickness, that speed, and that physicality to be able to navigate in small spots. And I think that's what really set him apart this weekend, is his ability to really navigate with his size and his physicality in small, tight settings.
All right, folks, please like and subscribe. 2 easy things to do here today. And make it on back next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And keep in mind, this is what we do every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And with the portal coming up, things will get even busier, and LeeAnn has lined us up with some amazing interviews. And once again, if you're just joining us, today's was Kennedy Brown, one of the top offensive tackles in the nation for 2027. You can check out the previous shows, a lot of great interviews and intel that's still relevant as well as we march forward into portal season. And of course, recruiting never stops, 24/7, 365. Catch LeeAnn's work at the Rebel Walk and, of course, her new assignment with UK Wildcats Wire.
Thanks for having us on. Like we said, lock us in every Tuesday. Lots of recruiting intel. Like I said, every week we try to cut it down. But if you can't join us on the move, as always, if you're like me and you want to listen to us in the car, stream us on your favorite audio platforms. You can always catch us on the replay, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, all those good things. But again, we are excited to bring you a big, busy spring. We're going to be hitting OT7. Of course, we know that they're taking place in Dallas, and we have a lot of exciting visits coming up for spring ball. Like we said, we hope to get out to Houston and catch some of that amazing talent out there and bring you some live interviews. But again, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and we'll see you here every Tuesday while we're on the move.
And we're not even done today. It's Ole Miss Rebels Live coming up in just 2 seconds on the Ole Miss channel, 2 p.m. Eastern, right now.